All right, we are live, and it's a little bit of the Fertile Fireside Chat. And I've got Bianca McRee here, going to talk a little bit about her fertility journey and what she's gone through to finally get pregnant now, 7 months. And how you doing, Bianca?
I'm doing really well. Feeling really good. Apart from a little cold, but I feel really good physically.
Well, thank you for joining us. And the fertility journey is not easy, and I was hoping that you can share what you've gone through on this journey and how nutritional changes and carnivore were really paramount, but also persistence and positivity through all the depression and the hardships. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about your story and how you come to be pregnant at this time.
Absolutely. So, my name is Bianca McRee. I'm from the Tampa Bay area in Florida. And my journey began about a year or two after I met my husband. We decided that we wanted to grow a family. Somewhere, I think it was like end of 2015, beginning of 2016. A year and a half had gone by and I knew something was wrong. I was also experiencing very painful periods for it took about 15 years. I remember it started in high school. I'd have periods so painful that there was a time where I was in statistics and I couldn't sit anymore and I army crawled my way to the nurse's office and no one dressed me, no one helped me. But when I made it to the nurse's office, she immediately responded, called my mom, and I went through like all of these doctors who kept trying to medicate me with birth control, and the birth control always made me worse. Like, really sick, or it didn't fix anything. It just gave me other problems and other side effects. And
Mhm, mhm.
I lived like that for about 15 years and like in all this pain, like consistently all the way up through. And I remember my husband and we consulted with an OB who did some fertility and he started us on Clomid cycles. That was when I experienced my first chemical pregnancy. We had gone through 3 rounds of it. Um, I was just really defeated. We took a break until for like a year or two, and then we ended up at a local clinic. And I kept they diagnosed me with unexplained infertility. And I even knew then, like something inside of me knew, hey, there's no such thing as an unexplained infertility diagnosis. There's
Yeah,
something
yeah.
wrong that they're not finding. Like that it doesn't make sense. I know there's something wrong. And instead of checking me further, they just pushed us through IUI cycles, 3 of them. I couldn't take it anymore after that. I was just, this is an exercise in futility, I felt like. Um, then we took another break until 2020. And then I have a friend who had a client, she's a hairstylist. She had a client who went through CNY fertility and she had gotten her son with CNY fertility Colorado. And so, because the next step with the clinic here local was to push me through IVF at 8,000 around, 18,000 around.
Wow.
So, right. And
Okay.
so we were like, we can't, we're, we thought it was just wasn't going to happen for us because I knew that was the route I needed to go. And so I met her. Her name's Kayla, and she told me all about CNY and about how wonderful you guys were and the affordability and just how it worked for her. And so I thought like and I other women have messaged me and said this is real. This has to be a scam. $3,900. You get great care. How is this possible? And I'm like, it's not a scam. It's a real thing. I'm pregnant. I promise you. Because I it was too good to be true for me too.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
reached out. I had a consult. It was wonderful, and then we started our journey with CNY, Colorado in Colorado Springs, and Dr. Fink and Magarelli were so awesome, absolutely awesome. And that's where I finally got the diagnosis of endometriosis.
Was that
So I
by
finally had
ultrasound? Was that by
um
ultrasound or by laparoscopy?
so no, so I started with the Receptiva,
Okay.
and I had the inflammation marker, and then it was Lupron, and then from Lupron, if Magarelli gave me the choice, you could do the laparoscopy at this point, or you could do the Lupron. I went for Lupron because I was afraid of surgery, and then after that, I was just like, it didn't work, so I was like, let's just do the laparoscopy at this point. So we did that, but I had finally had a name, and while this is all going on, I also knew subconsciously, like, inside of me, that it had to be something with the food, like, because I was always changing my diet, but I couldn't
Mhm.
pinpoint it. I went from paleo to Mediterranean to vegetarian to pescatarian and vegan. I literally tried all of
Wow.
those diets, and I was having hair loss. I was experiencing hair loss, painful periods, of course. It turned into, night sweats before my period. I'd soak through the mattress. I
Wow.
started having PMDD, which is, premenopausal dysphoric disorder, and severe depression. I mean, so chronic, I would be borderline suicidal at times, which is not like me. Um, I had psoriasis really bad. I would get it between my fingers, my toes, from my thighs all the way down to my ankles. Um, Cystic acne.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
had all of these symptoms, and, I remember my mom was concerned. She worked for an oncologist, and she brought me to the oncologist, and they thought I had lupus or leukemia,
Mhm.
and they couldn't figure it out. Negative for both, right? They couldn't figure it, something immunological, they figured. So I continued through my journey. I had the laparoscopy. I went through 3 retrievals in, Colorado Springs, 3 transfers, and then, we had to take a break, right, for financial reasons. And then I remember feeling so low and just reaching out on Instagram, and another woman named Amy reached out to me and she said, "Here's Dr. Kiltz's number. I want you to call him." And I remember being so afraid. I'm like, "Are you sure?" Like, I felt like I shouldn't have your phone number. Like, it was just, and then I called, and it's just so wonderful. You just reached out and you were open to talking to me and my husband, and you were just like, "I'm going to help you." And so we shipped our embryos from Colorado to Syracuse and started treating with you. I remember after our second retrieval and fourth transfer, that was when you sat us down and you said, "I want to talk to you about carnivore." And I was like, "Oh boy, here we go." Right? This is something new. Like, I, heard of vegan, never heard of carnivore, and I tried everything, right? I thought I tried it all, but I'd never heard of carnivore, so I didn't, and I was open-minded. And you counseled us for about an hour, and I was like, "You know what? I'm sold, and I'll try anything at this point. Anything." And I trusted, and I still trust you to this day. So my husband and I went in full force, and that was the best thing. He was so supportive. And I remember 74th day, because I was counting, because my first 2, 3 weeks of carnivore was rough. It was really rough. Keto flu, leg cramps, things like that, from all the oxalate dumping. And that happens because
Right.
I eat right, because I was heavy on all the carbs and the plants, and I didn't, my body was going through a pretty hard detox. But day 74, I woke up. I had no depression. My psoriasis had cleared up. I noticed my hair was growing back. My skin was clear. It was glowing. People around me noticed. The inflammation in my body was down. I weighed the same, but you could tell I looked leaner, but I weighed the same. I was stronger in the gym.
Mhm.
Um, it's just incredible. Absolutely, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the benefits. And my night sweats had disappeared, and my painful periods didn't exist anymore.
Wow. Wow. What about how are your emotions and just your mentality?
Clear. It was the depression had gone away. I didn't experience PMDD with any further periods. all of that had just gone away. I just woke up and I just felt had such a positive mindset. And I remember you constantly talking about it's about what you put in your mind and in your mouth and in your mind and in your mouth. And it's like I had faith the whole time, which because I'm a believer too, right? So I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, but I had faith the whole time, but it had nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with the faith aspect. It was that I was so inflamed and taken over by all of these plant toxins that I just couldn't function properly.
Hmm.
Hormones, and we know this, you and I, that your immune system begins in the gut and that affects your mental health. The state of it totally affect, and I didn't fully have the understanding until I actually experienced it, right? It's like, I didn't know what signing your life away meant until I bought a house. Then I understood, right? And so, but I remember it's what you put in your mind and in your mouth. And when I had that mental clarity, when all of that, and brain fog is a real thing, it's just brain inflammation. When all of that calmed down, I was able to have a much more positive attitude and outlook. I slept better. I mean, everything, I just can't even, it's something that needs to be experienced, right? And so we had gone through, I finally I had another transfer that didn't take, and then I had a hysteroscopy, and I continued the carnivore diet. I was about 3 or 4 months in, and then in August I had my last transfer with you, and I remember feeling so positive. I just felt so positive. I felt so good about everything. My whole attitude, because every transfer prior to that, I set myself up with this negative mental self-talk of like, this isn't going to work. This is going to fail. This is useless. All that, fear was just there. And in my
Hmm.
last one, I just had this piece of like, I've done all that I could. I know that, I'm in a very good physiological state. I can trust my body. This is going to work. And I remember you completed the transfer and then just prayed over us. And I just felt like I was pregnant. And I remember the next day we went to Niagara Falls and I was standing at the Horseshoe Falls and I said out loud to myself, I'm pregnant. And I was, and I am. And it was, I mean, absolutely, absolutely incredible experience.
So maybe you can tell us a little bit about um, the mindful part of it and the nutritional part of it. So we don't talk enough about the mind in this process, I think, and faith in God or that higher power and being more positive. And sometimes you had a harder time. And do you think you had a harder time with finding that on a standard Mediterranean vegetarian vegan diet, and an easier time to see that the positivity and the greater process on a carnivore?
Absolutely. I absolutely felt like I was more separated from God when I was eating like garbage, eating like crap basically, than I do now, being a carnivore keto. Because there is just this mental clarity, and it's true. They say that the way you feel affects your mental. It's really, and I'm a bachelor's of social work as well. And one of the main things that we focus on with our clients, especially children or the mental clients that I have that are mental health clients, is if they are not in a physically healthy or good place, it's a lot more difficult to help them mentally, because how can you focus when you feel so
Mhm.
terrible, you
Yeah.
know? And I definitely felt like my whole being carnivore, when all of that changed for me, when my depression went away, and my mental state became better, I felt like it was so much easier for me to just be positive, be more positive, like have a better outlook toward things, because every transfer prior, I was negative. And then all of a sudden, it was just easy to be positive about it, whether or not it worked out. And I
How
never
long?
had that before.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned you had a lot of pain early on, endometriosis, which really wasn't diagnosed until later. I mean, you started having difficult menstruation when you were a teenager?
Mhm. When I was in my sophomore year of high school is when it got really bad and just
And
continued
and
on.
and what to the did you go to the doctor and you said you were on birth control pills? What was the sort of the answer to all of that?
So, I went to multiple doctors. There were times where, on top of that, endometriosis can cause cysts, and I would develop large cysts on my ovaries, and they would burst, and they would put me in the hospital. And I'd go to the hospital, and they say, "There's nothing we can do for you." And they just said they'd load me up on medication and send me home. Or I'd end up at a new OB, and their solution was a new birth control pill, or a ring, or an IUD, or a patch. And I got to a point where I was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
taking birth control anymore. I'm just going to live my life. And I did. I mean, and I continued, and I didn't know any better. I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey. Um and it's a rough part of town. It's a rough neighborhood. I had really rough growing up. And I was raised by my grandma. Like, my mom was there, but my grandma was my primary parent, and she worked a lot. So my diet consisted of a lot of Chinese food and zebra cakes and things like that. Growing up, uh you know uh cold cuts and Munster cheese and breads, all that pasta, all that stuff. And I just continued to have these menstrual issues all the way through, and a lot of doctors told me, I got the same response. There's nothing we can do. This is common. Some of them told me it was normal, and
Mhm.
I knew it
Mhm.
wasn't normal. I'm like, this is
And
not normal.
what do you think? What medications besides the birth control were you placed on?
That's basically it. I wouldn't take anything else beyond that.
Do you think there was a contributing factor of the birth control pill that it may have contributed to your infertility along with your diet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The birth control pills always gave me issues. They always did. They always made things worse. I would no more painful periods, but I'm bleeding all month, things like that. I'm becoming jaundice. I could feel that I wasn't able to get proper nutrition, if that makes sense, while I was on
Mhm.
that when I was on birth control. I felt like I was being blocked of things. I had I had it robbed me of my energy, just things
Wow.
like that. I didn't feel right. I gained weight, and I've always been slender, and I remember gaining weight rapidly. You know, um, my skin got really bad, and I just remember going through all these crazy, like, hormonal changes, being on and off birth control as a result.
Did anyone ever talk to you about nutrition and how it may affect your mind and your body?
Never, never. Magarelli was the first one to say, after my first transfer, he said, "Make sure you stay under 60 carbs." And I remember saying, "What the hell's a carb?" You know, I had an idea, but I really, I'm thinking carbs. I'm like, oh, in the terms of simple and complex, and just don't eat bread and pasta. But I didn't realize, I never knew what a carb actually was until I got into the world of carnivore.
And so you went through vegan, vegetarian, Mediterranean, ketogarian, paleo, and tell us what your thoughts are on carnivore and how it's been how easy or hard it was, how to get your mind wrapped around this concept that carbohydrates are plants and plants are the poison, and eliminating them may have been the home run in your case.
So I'm like I said, like I'm, you know, a social work major, and like so one of the things that I'm like been trained to do is research. So I researched this a lot, like a whole lot. And it's very interesting, like the studies and the research that I had found and that I had learned, which made it like, well, first off, when you had introduced me to the idea of doing this, right, after the hour consultation of like, this is how you need to eat, I was sold. I was like, I'm just going to do this. But of course, a part of me was still skeptical. I was like, I need to research this, right? Because I thought I had done it all. And I had started to learn about like the Inuit tribes, the Native Americans, you know, prenatals. This it's so funny because I say this to people and it still doesn't register. Prenatals didn't exist until about 40 or 50 years ago. They didn't exist. Like, my great great grandma wasn't taking vitamins and supplements. So where's the nutrition? Where's the vitamins coming from? Right? They had a much better diet than we have today. And
Mm-hmm.
so, just looking into all of that stuff just really changed my mind. I'm not sure if you're familiar with I learned about this recently too. Dr. William Beaumont. So in the 1800s, he was an army surgeon, and he knew that we could not digest plants. And so there was a man named Saint Martin who was a fox hunter. He was shot, and he had one of those wounds. I can't remember the medical terminology for it, where it just stays open, it doesn't heal. And he convinced him to Dr. Beaumont convinced him, hey, let me observe you for 2 years. I'll keep you alive and let me observe you. And he did. And his study as a surgeon was the gastrointestinal function. And he studied the stomach acids, and how the stomach worked. So he would take a string and tie food onto it and stick it in through this wound in his stomach and then pull it out later to see how it digested. And he found that meat is highly, highly absorbed and like nutrient dense and easily
Digest.
processed by the gut
Yeah.
than plants. So just all of this information, because like I said, I'm an avid researcher, and I encourage people out there who are watching this and who are skeptical, just do the research. I mean, it's all out there. If you're skeptical to even try it, just do the research. I mean, it's it's incredible what this has done for me. Like, I know that if I didn't try, if I didn't take the chance and have the experience for myself, that I wouldn't be a mom. Carnivore brought down all the inflammation and my natural killer cell markers, because I remember we did all the immunological testing that showed that I had high natural killer cell activity. I was showing signs of antiphospholipid syndrome, all of these things that would prevent implantation because of the inflammation markers that were so high. And it brought all of that down to a level to where I could actually receive a pregnancy.
And tell us
And
a
that
little
just
bit about
tells
now. How far along are you now?
I'll be 7 months on Friday morning. Yeah.
And how is it? What's your diet now?
So it's pretty much the same. I'm at a 90-10 ratio now. So 90% carnivore, 10% keto. Um, my little Hazel loves keto tacos. So so I will eat them occasionally. And then once in a while, like I treat myself once in a while, maybe like a little kid's cup of ice cream. Or but my
Kiltz's
snacking
cup
is
of ice.
really, yeah,
Kiltz's cup of ice.
I love
Yeah.
Kiltz. We make it. We make it at home and we love it. And so I'll treat myself in little areas like that. I'll occasionally have like a Greek yogurt, things like that. But I still try to stay in that realm of I don't veer off track. It's like a 10%. So 90% is 2 meals a day, straight carnivore, and maybe a snack in the middle. I need it sometimes. Pork rinds, bacon. Um, the carnivore crisps, Paleo Valley meat sticks, things like that. So I try to just stay in within that realm in my
And
pregnancy.
how was it? Let's see, you did how many IVF retrievals and how many transfers?
4 rounds of IVF retrievals, 6 transfers.
And how were you able to emotionally get through all of that?
I wasn't. I don't know how. It was the first 4 or 5 rounds were brutal for me. I remember calling you. I think it was after my 4th or 5th failed transfer, hysterical, and I said, "I'm gonna quit." And you talked me off the edge. I remember that. I said, "I'm gonna quit, Dr. Kiltz. I can't do this anymore. I have embryos on ice. I don't know. I just probably just donate them. I can't do this anymore, you know?" And you talked me off the edge and you said, and I remember you said, faith in food and never give up. And you hung up the phone. And I was so mad. I was like, how could he do this? Right? Faith in food and never give up. Click. And I was like, I was so upset. But then I prayed about it and I was like, you know what? He's right. Like, I've come this far and I remember pushing through. But prior to that, right, it was just a mental and emotional. I was in a really dark place. I was in a very, very dark place. Being a mother is one of the things that I have wanted for so long. And I've always known that I wanted to be a mom. And, just going through all of it and feeling like a failure, I felt like less of a woman, like my body had failed me. I didn't understand what was wrong. I felt like I couldn't get any answers. I felt like it was just all an exercise in futility. And there were moments where, like, I questioned, like I told you, like I had that deep, dark depression where, do I want to live? Do I want to go on this way? Do I
Well,
just want to give up and accept that I'm never going to be a mom? So
how was your partner and you dealt with this together, and how was he done with all of this?
he was very supportive through the whole thing, but there were times where he felt really defeated too, where he would
Mhm.
cry with me, where he would question things with me. Um, but he was willing to do whatever he had to do with me. So when we had gone carnivore, he was like, "I'm on board. I'll support you." And he cooks about 80% of the meals, honestly. He's like, he cooks one of the best steaks I've ever had. So, and he's a meat guy. So he was like, "I can do this." Um, and he was actually more on board and full-fledged than I was, and that gave me the motivation really to really just be strict about it. I mean, we gave up caffeine and everything. And it was, I mean, what it did for him was incredible too. He had increased energy, increased mood, increased mental clarity. Like, he became this different person that I hadn't known yet. It was quite remarkable, actually.
What would you be your recommendation to someone who's suffering out there? And unfortunately, there's too many women couples um, uh, that are suffering and been suffering or continue to suffer. And getting this message out. It seems so radical. This concept of faith in food, because we're so fixed on medicine and science being exact and solving the problem. My thoughts for myself, because I suffered with many things for many years, and I learned this from online non-doctors, um, just sort of tripping over these ideas. That's why I share them. But how do we get the message out to inspire people? Again, plenty of people have babies with vegan, vegetarians, Mediterranean diets, but when it's not happening, how do we say, hey, listen, maybe food and maybe the mental side for all of us is part of that.
So I've had these conversations with some women who have reached out to me, and and it's really difficult. I think the number one thing is to have a very gentle approach, and just do what we do. Like, you constantly talk about your experience and you constantly talk about the benefits of it. And that's what I try to do is like, hey, this is my experience and these are the benefits. Here's the research. Here's what I know. And I just support them in whatever decisions they make. So I think it's important to, just support people where they're at, especially these women, and not to chastise them for the decisions that they make. I have multiple friends who I'm currently like coaching. I have one who's got Hashimoto's, and very just very gentle with her because she's had like several relapses in her diet, because it's difficult for some people to say I'm all in, when you've been so conditioned and domesticated for so
Hmm.
long, right? By society and the food, and just, it's almost like we've been duped and put under this spell. And it's really hard to wake up for some people, I think a lot of us have to be at a breaking point and in a lot of pain to make these changes. So for me, it's like, I'm just like, I try to keep the focus on me. Here's my experience. Here's what's worked for me. My hand is stretched out whenever you're ready, and I'm just going to keep talking about it until, you know.
So how can people reach out to you and find you?
So I'm on Instagram. My handle is Making Baby McRee. I'm also on Facebook, Bianca McRee. You guys can message me anytime. I even have email. It's biancatgb23@gmail.com. And I will talk to anyone who's struggling, anyone who has questions about their fertility journey, or even just carnivore. I've had men and women alike reach out to me. I have another friend who, he's a male. He's got diabetes type 2, and I had, through talking to him about my experience, he says, okay, I'm going to try it. He's been eating, he's keto. So he's trying to transition to carnivore, but he's been able to bring his A1C down.
Wow.
I mean, that's just incredible. I have another friend who went carnivore with me at the same time, and as me and my husband Travis, and she was on psych meds for about 8 years, and she's been able to come down off her psych meds. Her parents did carnivore with her after, and her mom's diabetes is in remission. No, no more metformin, no more insulin.
So ultimately, almost all of our diseases, including infertility, repetitive losses, fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, anovulation, uh, uh, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, is all due to our diet. Would you agree?
I would say so. Yep, I would definitely say so, because these issues don't exist, right? So, right, we back to the Inuits. So, if you look at the Inuits and their diet primarily consists of caribou, salmon, eggs, and seal blubber. They have no disease, right? The Native Americans, my ancestors, were living up until 140 years old. Their diet primarily consisted of buffalo, right? And like I said,
Right.
your vitamins and supplements today are the majority, right? I'd say about 95% are synthetic. They're synthetic. They're not even real. I think there's one or two prenatals on the market that are actually made out of food, but they're plant-based. I remember I went to labor and delivery. It was about 24 weeks, and I was so stressed out. I was having Braxton Hicks. I had a lot of work stress, and I went in, and and they're doing, they're checking me out, checking out the baby's heartbeat and all that. And the nurse came in, and she's like berating me. What are you eating? Like, are you eating well? How are you sleeping? Are you taking your vitamins? Are you taking your vitamins? Are you taking your? And I looked at her and I said, because I wasn't answering her because I knew what was coming. I looked at her and said, okay, I'm gonna tell you what I do, but I don't want no crap, okay? But I'm gonna tell you. And I said, um, I eat primarily a carnivore diet. I'm carnivore keto. I said, I don't ever pass 50 carbs in a day. And she's typing all this and grunting at me. She's going. And I'm like, I don't take prenatal vitamins. Ugh. I'm like, I eat liver. Ugh. Right? She's typing. And I said, and my labs are perfect. They're beautiful. And she says, okay. She says, but you need prenatals. I said, well, what did we do 40 years ago when they didn't exist? Prenatals. I said, prenatal is a multivitamin that they put folic acid in. It didn't exist. And she's like, well, people who don't have balanced diets need it. And I said, right. I said, and have a I have a really good diet. You know, I have an ancestral diet. An hour later, the doctor comes in with her and he says, well, I ran your cultures and and he said, he used this word, they all came back perfect. Perfect. Oh, by the way, there's ketones in your urine. I said, yeah, I know, but everything's perfect. And I looked at her and I said, I told you. And she just smiled at me. But that's the thing is that all of this extra stuff is just propaganda. It's a way to make money and it's a way to supplement nutrition for the SAD diet, standard American diet.
Right, right, right. So how do other people around you, family members, you mentioned some have made some changes already. Would you say that they're inspired by your changes and your pregnancy? Any naysayers?
Well, yeah, so some are, and the majority are still skeptical. Even though they've watched me very closely, I had a conversation with my mom-in-law today, and for the first time she listened because she saw we were gonna do this live today, and she was like, "Tell me about it," and she actually listened. So my mom-in-law has many health concerns, high blood pressure, and things like that, and my father-in-law as well, oh, cholesterol, they think it's cholesterol's the devil, and it's we try to explain to them that's actually not so, um and why, right? And so she actually listened to me today, but then we got to she's like, I still have a hard time with you not taking prenatals. It's like and I'm like, listen, I'm like, your great great grandmother didn't take prenatals, you
And had
know
10 children or more and didn't have the same diseases that we're seeing today.
Right. I was like, people in the 60s and 70s, everybody was hot on the beach back then. It's not what it is, what it's become today. And I'm gonna butcher his name, so forgive me. I think it's Dr. Dean Nicolatino. He's got a very long last name. Well, he said, right, genetics load the gun, but diet and lifestyle pull the trigger. Always, it's the truth.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. We're all built essentially the same, and we're all really essentially the same.
Right.
But our nutritional styles and our lifestyles can be very different. And there are some genetic predispositions that likely increase certain diseases over others. But it's kind of like smoking, I always say. A lot of people smoke, but most don't get cancer. But you don't recommend smoking. And so it's still the leading cause of disease, in my opinion, that plants are deadly. They're the bullet and pulling the trigger. And they're the predators, I say, and we're just the prey. And so
Right.
by simply going keto is okay, but carnivore is like the master class. And it's such and such and such a masterful change. You talk to a lot of your clientele. How open are they into this carnivore keto ideas? How many of you think kind of are ready to start, or it takes the story? You got to keep working the story to get it moving.
I'd say maybe one is subscribed to carnivore, but the rest are keto, and then the other 50% are not even there yet. I'm gonna try other methods. I have another friend who called me while she was in the grocery store, and I'm helping her pick things out, but it's like she's like, I'm really really trying, and it's like, it she's just not all the way there yet, but it's for some people it's just really difficult because like I said, we're so conditioned, we're so domesticated, just so
The
conditioned, but I'd
mind,
say
the mindset is so hard to wrap our brains around it, because you might reach for something, but your brain says, no, don't do that. Fat and cholesterol are bad. And the last I learned that our hormones are made of cholesterol, and our all our cells are made of fat and cholesterol. And so we've just been misinformed, misled for so long. It's the propaganda and the domestication of the dictators that have sort of pushed a lie. And as a doctor, and someone commented that doctors don't talk about diet because we don't even know what a proper diet is, and we still think it's fruits and vegetables.
right. Right. So the oncologist that I saw that was trying to figure out what was wrong with me prior to, coming to CNY when I was really sick and my mom took me in, I saw him again to retest for APS, right? So I had the positive for APS, right? And then 12 weeks later they retest you to make sure that the diagnosis is accurate or not. And but I had been strict carnivore for those 12 weeks. And I got
Yeah.
back in all my levels, right? So for years my neutrophils was low. That's white blood cells, and they were low. And so that was why they thought I may have had lupus or leukemia. And then for the first time, neutrophils perfect range, no signs of APS. All my labs showed no more inflammation or natural killer cell markers. And he says, "What'd you do?" And he's Indian, and so I said, "Carnivore." And he's like, "What's this? I've never heard of it." He's like,
Yeah.
"I've heard of vegan. All my friends are vegan." I said, I, I'm the absolute opposite. And this is how I've been able to heal my body. And he couldn't believe it, right? He's an oncologist. Doctors take one nutritional course, right?
And
Throughout the
it's
whole,
the wrong one. And it's the wrong one. That's the
right,
problem. Meaning that whatever nutrition we learned was still wrong. That's the
right,
problem, right? It's we simply focus on, it's the belief system. Well, you want to get through medical school and residency and get your license and practice medicine and not be chastised in the community, because I know I was chastised. I've been reported to the New York State licensing board. The medical university that I work at said you can't talk about this, and yet so many people are healing on carnivore.
right. They are.
And
And so many people are.
and some people say I don't digest meat, yet I always wonder, has anyone seen meat in their toilet? They see
Never.
plants, but never
Right.
meat. So it's
Right.
the
Because
brain.
plants, right. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Sorry. So it's because plants are made of cellulose and the human body cannot digest cellulose. So if it can't break down cellulose, how are we getting the nutrients? And that's why we're seeing whole pieces of lettuce and corn in the toilet because it's literally made of pure cellulose. You cannot digest it. And so I encourage anyone out there who still has, maybe like some apprehension about it to research Dr. William Beaumont, Beaumount, and check out his research because in the 1800s they knew,
Well,
he
Dr.
knew
Dr. Salisbury steak.
Salisbury
He was a
steak.
physician
Yes.
out of Albany Med in the Civil War. His men were dying of dysentery. He changed them to a steak-based diet, and they all thrived and survived. And he found that the bacteria and yeast, which are not supposed to be in our bowels of any significance, love the sugars we eat.
Yes.
And now the sugars in plants are tremendously more sweet. They're more addictive. Plus, we've been brainwashed to eat them, and they cause all the damage and disease because plants are never required in the diet. Sugar's never required in the diet. Fiber is never required in the diet.
Right.
And obviously, as a fertility specialist, what am I talking about diet for and food for? It doesn't make any sense. But as I mentioned earlier, endometriosis, fibroids, PCOS, metabolic disorders, pelvic pain, unexplained infertility. It's all basically plant poisoning. That's
Right.
it.
Because endometriosis feeds off of estrogen, and your plants, a lot of majority, especially like soy-based plants and tofu and beans and lectins, it's estrogen mimicking. It's estrogen mimicking. So you're putting these faux estrogens and these fake hormones into the body, right? When we're ingesting these plants and like and soy products and things like that. So essentially, if you have endo, you're feeding that with these plants and these defense chemicals and these faux estrogens, and it's creating more damage, and we don't even know it because we think that this is the way we're supposed to eat or this is healthy. And then on the subject of hormones, with, as far as cholesterol and vitamin D, a lot of people don't know. People are shocked when I say, hey, vitamin D is not a vitamin, it's a hormone.
It's all part of the cholesterol production,
Right,
and
and you cannot make it
absolutely,
without cholesterol, and
yeah,
people are mind blown.
yeah.
I'm like, cholesterol is not. So I have a lot of friends who think cholesterol is the enemy. They're on a cholesterol med, and then I tell them, I say, hey, you know that the majority of people with heart attack and stroke are people that are have a normal to low cholesterol level, not high.
Abs and LDL, HDL, all the markers for cholesterol are to sell a drug, and it's faulty science because they used to believe fat was the cause, but
Right.
it turned out that sugar is. And Dr. Yudkin had sort of fought Ansel Keys, but Ansel Keys was much more sort of powerful. And sometimes people who get yelled at by kind of sort of negative people that feel they're right, they just say, forget it, and the money fed the marketplace to sell the plants to domesticate all of us and keep us meek. Just as simple as that. And meat makes us masters, and meek is fed by mush.
Amen. Yes, it is.
There's a question here about coffee and tea. Do you drink those?
I don't drink tea. I quit coffee entirely. But then recently, I started, but I don't drink caffeinated coffee. I drink fake coffee. So
You
from the,
minimize it.
yeah, yeah. Well, it starts with the egg is like the Bible for anyone who's new into the fertility world and going through IVF. It's like everyone, not everyone, but the majority of us read, it starts with the egg. And she talks about No Fun Joe, which is a coffee via the Swiss water process, eliminates the 99% of caffeine, and it's effectively safe when you're going through. And I enjoy the taste of coffee, more so pregnant for some reason. I guess it's a craving. And I'll have that with some whipping cream in the morning. Um, and that's about it, So I do. That's like the one thing that I'm gonna have to give up again. I did give it
Well,
up for those 4 months, but I'm gonna have to give it up again.
I'm off now for 7 months. I've never felt better. I've been on it for 55 years, and it was easy as peasy this time. And I'm now on my day 3 of a 5-day fast. And this is my first 5-day fast. I'm going to do it once a year. I do a 3-day fast once a month and a 2-day fast once a week. And I typically eat one meal a day. I stick to bacon, eggs, butter, beef, my ice cream from time to time, and salt. Minimize the sugar, eliminate the fruits, fiber, vegetables, seeds, and nuts. I think a little bit of simple sugar from time to time is okay, but all the
Right.
time is not. And alcohol, minimize, eliminate. Coffee, minimize, eliminate. Tea, minimize, eliminate. And I recommend some sparkling water, put some salt in it if you don't have it already. Yeah, so that's sparkling water with some minerals in it is good. Is good. Let's see. One worked, but we lost the baby at 20 weeks. Now blessed with a baby girl after 7 years of trying to conceive. Tony. And I had a couple, 10 years of trying, 30 to 40 of her age. Finally, after 30 treatments, finally goes carnivore on her own, delivers her baby, natural pregnancy, and voila, carnivore. That's the
Incredible.
craziness to all this. Crazy, right? And let's see, tried fasting, had to give up coffee to make it happen. A lot of people use coffee to get through a fast. Have you done any fastings at all?
I'm a natural intermittent faster. So I naturally, I not hungry at all until about maybe noon, 1 o'clock. And then I'll have like my first meal, which is usually eggs and bacon. That's my go-to. Sometimes I throw some cream cheese in my eggs. It's delicious.
Right. Yeah.
But I like to stick with raw milk, raw dairy. There is a brand called Organic Valley that makes raw cheese, delicious. And then I have a local farm down here where I get raw milk from. Um, and then I won't eat again until dinner time, and it's usually a ribeye or a ground beef or maybe a piece of salmon, or my favorite once in a while is my bacon wrapped scallops. It's always something, yeah, meat based that I'll eat.
What are your plans after delivery?
My plans are to go strict carnivore again. No coffee, just back to the 2 meals a day, no snack, just strict carnivore the way that I was. I felt my best. I've also, Anthony Chafee, one of his podcasts, he talked about the development of his friend's baby who was a doctor. She was told that she needed oats for breastfeeding. It actually reduced her breast milk. She
Yes.
went back to strict carnivore, was able to produce, and my plan is to strictly breastfeed. I if you I was floored, right? You pick up any can of formula, seed oils, seed oils, chemicals. They put a chemical in the Infamil that is supposed to be like a non-caking preservative. It's actually highly toxic. So I said, this is my plan. I'm going to go strict carnivore and I am going to breastfeed, breastfeed, breastfeed. Um, Hopefully for the first 2 years is the goal. But I remember I specifically that podcast and how he talked about the development of that baby as a result of the mother remaining strict carnivore throughout her breastfeeding with her child.
Well, we addict our children in utero to the chemicals of plants, sugars, to the chemicals that are making them addicted. Think of the nicotine and caffeine and alcohols are going to the baby in utero.
Right.
Fermentation in the bowels of the plants makes alcohol, aldehydes, heat, and gas goes to the baby, and so all the antigens. So essentially, I think all of our problems are strictly secondary to the incorrect nutrition. And Dr. Chafee beautifully shares the story that our true ancestors ate fatty meat, organ meats, organ meats, organ meats, organ meats.
Nose to tail.
Absolutely.
I'm
That
big on
knows
nose I'm big on nose to tail. I like beef heart. I love raw elk liver, which I don't eat in pregnancy just because raw game can have parasites. I make sure, that I'm eating cooked beef liver. Kidney, love it. But also on that note, you're absolutely right. So I remember in my first trimester, I was horribly sick with morning sickness. And I allowed other moms to convince me, oh, you need carbs, you need carbs, you need carbs. When you're sick, it's gonna, that's your body telling you need carbs because you're sick. And I knew better, but I was like, let me be open-minded and just try it. And it put me in the hospital with awful case of gastritis. They thought it was my gallbladder. Turns out it was a really, really heavy case of gastritis, and I broke out in psoriasis from the waist down. I said, right, I'm not doing that again. Back to carnivore it is, right? So
There's a tendency sometimes, I think, well, once you get pregnant, okay, this is enough. And someone commented they lost a baby at 20 weeks, Tony, and they're now had a baby girl after 7 years of trying. But it's the one thing I emphasize: carnivore is critical throughout pregnancy. Once you've delivered your baby, and then once your baby's done breastfeeding, carnivore. I call it
yeah,
the baby's way: bacon, eggs, butter, beef, my ice cream, salt, Kiltz's ice cream,
And
Intermittent
intermittent
feasting.
fasting.
I do my one meal a day. Typically, I might have a small snack or two, but it's a piece of steak and it's dry aged, my own steak that I cut it up. And I really work on eating at home or making food at home. And if I go out to dinner, it's always steak or lobster or oysters. And that is the very, very, very best.
Yes. I even do raw butter, just straight up bites of butter, and that gets me through too.
And there was some question in here about butter and eggs because some people cream, butter, eggs, cheese. People have allergies to those things. Uh,
Yes.
did you have any of those problems?
No, I don't have any casein or lactose. I'm not, no casein allergies, nothing with lactose. I do can tell you that I do feel better if it's raw and grass fed. So if it's grass fed butter and if it's raw milk or dairy or raw cheese, and that's what I try to stick with because I do feel better. Because once it's pasteurized, it's eliminating the nutrients. It's,
Esther Boros is here. Thanks for joining us, Esther. Laszlo Boros talks about deuteronomics and heavy hydrogen called deuterium, which is essentially comes from plants. And by eating plants, we damage our cells because of the deuterium. And by eating a carnivore, and so certainly keto helps because it's a high fat diet, and fasting, you can reduce the heavy hydrogen, which is likely damaging our mitochondria and other parts of our body. So, that's important to know. So you could go to Laszlo Boros on our website, drkiltz.com. People can find the connection to deuteronomics. I highly recommend it. It's very fascinating and interesting. Spices and hot sauce, Bianca. And what do you think about those and or mayonnaise? The mayonnaise that Maria Emmerich loves to tout, and I do. I like simply pork fat or duck fat mayonnaise, but
yes.
it's simple: the egg and the pork fat, duck fat, and butter. Just the egg and butter makes great mayonnaise.
I agree. I agree. And then there are other simple recipes out there, but they call for lemon, lemon and vinegar, which is would be and that's highly acidic. I can even eat, and I loved spicy food. I love raw jalapenos and things like that, but it's not worth it. It just wrecks me. And right now, if I even eat anything, like I said, off kilter, right? It's like it's a gastrointestinal flare.
Off
Can't do it.
kilter.
Off
Off
kilter.
kilter. Yeah, my ice cream recipe, you can Google on YouTube. It's on my drkiltz.com. To me, life is a treat from time to time. The
Yes.
problem is people suggest eating fruits and honey all the time, but they are glycating. They damage your important glycoproteins and they damage your eggs because the egg and the sperm is coated with the sugar coating that gets damaged from eating sugars. And that's really deadly and dangerous for all of us.
I also find I'm more hungry if I eat fruits and honey. So it's definitely, and hunger signal says that, oh, you've had an insulin spike somewhere and now I'm crashing and now I need to eat.
And in some ways, I believe that we're meant to eat the fruit and honey when it's found under rare circumstances because it wasn't there all the time. Now, were we a frutivore, an omnivore, an herbivore, or carnivore? Well, we do our very best on carnivore, but we're not very smart animals, right? We will smoke things. We will inject them. We will drink them. We put the things on our body that actually are deadly and dangerous for us. So we're not that smart.
Yeah, but you're right about fruits. So, for a lot of like ancient tribes, fruits were only available just before the winter in one season. So the majority of the year, 3/4 of the year, you didn't have that.
Right, right, right. And so obviously, if we evolved on mostly very large animals for thousands, if not millions of years, who knows? And if we ate the berries, the seeds, and the nuts, I mean, imagine a whole tribe living on the berries and the seeds and the nuts that they harvested from where, right?
Right.
Berries are not a good one that I recommend of any significance. You can eat them from time to time, but again, there are people that are allergic to berries, and anaphylactic reactions, I believe, are all plant-based. They don't happen from beef,
Meat. It never happens from meat.
but from fish and shellfish. That's where they happen from. So that's why I think we're not really fish or shellfish eaters of any significance, because the Inuit focused on seal and whale. That was their primary catch, I suspect.
Salmon and eggs. Yep.
Yep.
Caribou. Yeah. Duck eggs have become my favorite. So anyone out there who likes a savory, buttery egg that's has twice the nutrition as a chicken egg, duck eggs.
And it's important to eat the yolk.
Yes, the whole egg, the whole thing.
So tell us a quick one about your scallop wrap bacon, and how do you make that? Tell us
So
how
I take
simple it is.
so they're sea scallops to make sure that they're not farm raised, right? Because especially with salmon and things like that, they like to inject them. So I get my sea scallops. I get my pieces of bacon. It's uncured, no sugar bacon, right? And I take it and I wrap it with a toothpick, put them on a baking sheet, right? I'm going to make sure that it's not nonstick. I stay away from that. If it is nonstick, put it on a piece of aluminum foil, right? We want to stay away from those toxins. And then I'll take little squares of butter and I'll put a square on each one. And then I will bake it in the oven. I think I have to look it up. I think it's 300 for about 7 to 10 minutes. They come out nice and brown.
Beautiful.
And a little bit of salt on the way out. And I mean it, and then scallops just have like this natural sweet flavor, and it's just buttery, and the salt from the bacon, it's just so good.
So there's a couple of questions and here. Anything on? So obviously, drinking sodas, pops, Mountain Dew, those are bad for eggs and sperm.
Correct.
And cultured meat, maybe sort of like
Cured
deli
meat, you
meats,
mean?
cured meats,
Cured
maybe.
meat?
Yeah, cured meats. Not
Yeah.
not recommended.
No, high histamine, you know? So,
And the interesting part is there's more histamine in celery than there is in bacon that is cured, by the way. So that's something that people don't understand. Much
it's
more in the
incredible.
vegetables than there are on the meats. But you can get some really great bacon that's cured and doesn't have the nitrates and things like that. Dry
Right.
aged is great.
Same with carcinogens, right? Same thing with carcinogens. I think what was it? 136 carcinogens in Brussels sprouts. And so it and alone, human carcinogens. So, and then, these things are that's way more than you'll ever find in a piece of bacon.
And TCAP recipes gain 20 pounds on honey and fruit. And I wish, I love Dr. Saladino, but it's the wrong message because it is addictive and deadly chemicals that the plants have, but he must be addicted to them, which basically the plants have done their duty to addict us to them, which harms us all. So I think that's one of the bad things. Let's see. I think we're doing pretty. Anything else that you wanted to mention that I didn't ask, Bianca?
I'm sure there's a lot, but my baby brain won't let me remember. There's definitely so much. There's so much more to it. But oh, here's one. Do you think birth control is helpful with getting rid of cysts? I don't think so.
They're probably
I
good
think
for making cysts.
right, absolutely. And hormone disruption. I thoroughly believe that carnivore is the way, BBs is the way. Um, like I said, no more painful periods and none of that, like no more night sweats. My hair grew back, cystic acne went away, psoriasis went away, and then we got pregnant, and all those things just leveled themselves out.
Yeah, bacon,
You know,
bacon, eggs, butter, beef will solve it. Get rid of, so anyone who has endometriosis or pelvic pain or ovarian cysts or even fibroids, go carnivore at the first sign of them. And my sense again is breastfed and then meat from the bone fed. And we've got to get adolescents, young, old, everyone on carnivore in order to reduce all the terrible inflammation, the cancers, the strokes, the depression, the suicide. Too many people are suffering.
yep. So many people are suffering, and it's like I'm sure the majority of them have an inkling feeling that it has to be what, like I did. I had that inkling feeling, the gnawing at me, like, just eating my lunch and just knowing that it has to be the food. I mean, otherwise I wouldn't change my diet so many times. Like, I knew that it was something that I was putting in my body that just, and I tell you, when I say I tried everything, I mean, I tried tinctures, I tried traditional Chinese medicine, every herb you can think of. I had a stinky cabinet in the house. It was a corner cabinet. You couldn't open it. It smelled like feet because I had every root and every plant and every herbal mixture in there. And it did more damage than anything else. I mean, that's why I don't touch tea. I don't drink tea. I had started to develop signs of colonitis. I was drinking tea every day. You know, I'd do a heavy workout at the gym and I'd drink a little cup of tea and I would be extremely sore, diuretic, just all these different methods that I tried. I mean, I had gotten to a point where if you told me stand on your head and howl at the moon, I would have done it, you know?
Yeah.
And but I always knew, I like intuitively, that it was something that I was missing, and carnivore was definitely the missing link. And it's so simple, right? It's like it's the simplest thing. You throw a steak on the grill with and you slather it in butter, and then I don't need to cook 3 sides. I don't need to, it's simple. It's so simple that us complicated humans can't seem to comprehend it.
Well, because we've all been mightily brainwashed for so long, thousands of years actually, not
Yes.
just recently. This is an ancient, because colonialization, slavery, uh, 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 peasants, prisoners, slaves, and soldiers. And we're all part of that. That has damaged us. What are your thoughts on salt? Someone commented about Redmond salt, and
So,
I've got my I've got my big thing of Malden salt here. I actually am using this to hold up my computer. I use Malden salt, so
yes,
it's holding
salt.
up my
Yes,
computer
the
here.
Redmond salt. Absolutely. That's the brand that I prefer to use, is Redmond's.
And salt is critical. Don't drink excessive water. And we drink too much water, and add more salt. And it's interesting how if you from Nicola D'Antonio, Nicolai D'Antonio, it's a
Right.
great long name, but his book is Salt Fix. But basically, the more salt you eat, the more it's excreted. The more plants you eat, the more it's saved as fat, because it all turns into fat, right?
Right. It's all carbs, right? So if you took an individual and you sucked all the carbs and sugars out of them, they would thrive. But if you sucked all the salt out of them, they would die.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing. So
Right.
you don't
And
need you don't go
I was
ahead.
gonna say, and I'm just a layman, right? I'm nothing special, like humbly said. I'm just a layman. And I've learned all of this through my personal experience and through all the research that I've done. And by sitting down with, giants like you and Chafee, and just really soaking in the knowledge and having an open mind, right? And I'm so grateful that I'm really great. I'm so absolutely grateful to you, Dr. Kiltz, because my husband and I are going to be parents.
And it's our driving force of life. and
Yes.
and around the globe, women are suffering, men are suffering, couples, individuals, all of our suffering. And infertility is just one of the diseases of the thousands that we're experiencing. So we're naming these thousands of diseases, but there's only one. It's inflammation secondary to a high plant-based, low animal fat diet. You can eat some fruit, some vegetables, some ice cream and cookies and cake from time to time. The problem is we've made the holidays every days. And
Right.
you have to recognize that you have to take care of this miracle machine every day, and you have to treat it like a temple, not like an amusement park. And that's one of
Yes.
the things that I highly recommend. And I did a TEDx talk a number of years ago, and someone mentioned it. Thank you very much. Someone's seen it, and it was a game changer for me to really focus on this conversation. Even though it's like, well, wait a minute, Dr. Kiltz, I just want a pill, a shot, a surgery, and you're not qualified to talk about diet because number one is a healthy diet is a balanced diet. It's a pyramid. It's the my plate, which is mostly plants and sugar.
Right. The pyramid's upside down.
The pyramid's upside down, and it focuses on lean meat. And there's something called protein poisoning and rabbit starvation, which is, see, our problem is we don't eat enough healthy fat, and healthy fat is animal fat. There's no fat in an avocado. Seeds and nuts are highly allergenic, and we've got to change it up.
Right.
Peach tea, good to drink from Snapple. No.
Read the label. So
And
I did this experiment with a family member, family friend, and she had developed recently Hashimoto's as well. Her mom had 2 strokes. And then her sister had cancer. So the whole family autoimmune. And so the sister who had just developed Hashimoto's gave me a call, and she's like, "Okay, I'm on board. Talk to me about carnivore. What do I need to do?" And so I've been coaching her through it.
yeah, and
And
we
yeah,
need
I told
cooks
her
and
read the
show you,
label.
right?
So anyone who's watching, and check this out. Go to your fridge, grab your ketchup, grab your mayonnaise, grab your salad dressing, read the labels. There is a chemical in there called disodium EDTA. Find it. Now go read your shampoo bottle. It's in your shampoo. They're putting it in your condiments and in your shampoo. It is a cancer-causing chemical that's used as a preservative, and it's in your shampoo. Why are we eating beauty products,
Well,
chemicals
if you go to,
in our food?
yeah, if you go to Pregnancy Safe Cosmetics, Asran, she's amazing. She's in France, I think, and she has a great Instagram, I think, a website on this. You can find it on my Instagram page, Pregnancy Safe Cosmetics, because even the cosmetics and the deodorants and the shampoos all contain these toxic chemicals that we need to eliminate in our nutrition. That's so important for sure. Bianca, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having
Joining
me.
all of us. You're an inspiration, and we are going to continue to follow you. And where can people find you again?
So my handle on Instagram is Making Baby McRee. So at Making Baby McRee all together. I'm on Facebook, Bianca McRee. And my email is Bianca, Bianca, T like Tom, G like Grace, B like boy, TGB23 at gmail.com. So reach out to me, anyone out there, if you have questions, if you need support. I know there's so many women that I found that are just, they're suffering alone. They're afraid to talk about their fertility journey. They go through IVF alone because there's stigma within the community still, there's stigma within their families. I know I've gotten some pushback for going this route. And I don't think that there should be any shame attached to it. Infertility is a disease. It's a disease like any other. And I hear you, I see you, you guys, you're not alone. You're not alone.
And so, plant oils, no, they're all deadly.
Right. No
And
seed
in
oils,
my
no plant
opinion,
oils.
even olive oil, even coconut oils. Coconut oil might be a little more safer, I think, if you're
Mhm.
a vegan. But vegetarians and everyone else, I say stay away from all the plant oils. And technically, a vegan nutrition is not sustainable for a human population.
Right.
It's deadly.
Tallow, butter, lard. Tallow,
Tallow,
butter,
butter,
lard.
lard.
Tallow, butter,
That's it.
lard. That's
All right.
it.
We love you, Bianca. We'll
I love
continue to
you
chat.
guys too.
And
Thank
thank
you
you,
so
everyone, for
much.
joining.
Thank you for
Appreciate
everything,
everyone.
Dr. Kiltz.